Hello, everybody. Today I'm painting a picture of a Rambo-looking warrior called Deathblow, comic book character Deathblow from the comic book Deathblow, also known as Deathblow, which is also the name of an act whereby you suck off a loaded gun and then it gives you a death blow, or you give it a death. Hey, did you know that when painting, so I'm painting flesh. I don't know if it shows right now. I'm using mostly my usual mix of a brown and a red and a yellow and a white to make the flesh colour. But I'll put a green in there also because I don't really know much of Deathblow. I know he exists. I'm aware of him being what he is, but outside of that, I don't really have much knowledge on the guy. So I had to Google image some pictures of him so I could make a picture of him myself for this person that paid me to paint this picture. And most of the pictures I saw were somewhat monotone. Some of them literally black and white. A lot of them actually just black and white, you know, like grayscale and such. And even the ones that had colour, it was just like a lot of green, like slightly desaturated green tones. So I thought I'd go for that kind of thing. And, you know, I guess he's a commando in camouflage type clothing, lots of green military fatigues, as they call them, I think. So I figured I'd try to go for that and make his skin, you know, camouflage somewhat with the rest of his outfit and whatnot. So I tried to put green in, well, I was going to say most everything. I think his skin and his clothes and some accessories and stuff. And tried not to make any part of him too bright, so he remains fairly toned down. So there's green in his flesh tones, and the flesh is just painted normally. The skin, you know, a couple of layers, one mid-tone layer, and then there's a couple of layers of highlights just to pull out details and stuff. And then the same on his shirt and his pants, or his vest top, his tank top. And those are green pouches on his shoulder that I just painted there, and he's got some green pouches on his belt that I'm painting there. And they all blend in. I think maybe slightly with this piece, if I was going to change anything, it would be to use maybe less of the green to make it a less camouflage. I think it maybe, when it's finished, loses something by being fairly somewhat monotone. Maybe I could have adjusted the image itself, or the drawing itself, to fit better with that kind of paint scheme. But that's just what I think of my painting, you know. Contrary to public belief, I'm not in fact perfect, and sometimes, but not all the time. And you've got to be aware that not everything you do is going to be the best thing you've ever done. And that's the point. That's what makes the best thing you've ever done the best thing you've ever done. Because if everything was the best thing you've ever done, then there wouldn't be a best thing you've ever done, because that's just the things that you do. So sometimes you've got to be a bit shit in order for the good bits to be good bits. Guns! I'm painting guns! As if I haven't done enough of that in my bloody life already. Using the typical method, you know, grey, but then you throw some blue in there, makes it that metallic gunmetal blue. The gun in his right hand is based off of an MP5K, and then just, like, I don't know, just some pistol, some generic comic book pistol in his other hand. Try to go fairly heavy on the shadows in parts, and that will be more apparent when I come in later with the darker, you know, the dark red, the blackish kind of colours, colour rather, for the outlines and the shadows and such. Painting in his ammo belts, which I'm aware require more detail, really. You know, little pointed ends on one side to make them actually look like shells as opposed to just a bunch of random cylinders on his body. But This is a smaller painting, as you can see by the size of my hands. My hands are relatively small in general, so this piece is small. There's a lot of detail to fit into such a small piece. But, you know, getting the tones on, you know, yellow with a little bit of green in there. So, again, I didn't want the, you know, the ammo belts to be bright, brassy yellow, glowing against his chest and crotch area. So I tried to keep those fairly toned down. And again, that's maybe something that I could have fixed if I was going to spend time editing it and such, is maybe make those a bit brighter, because they could have stood out a bit more, I think, in the final piece. Using a red gouache for this background. Gouache is good because it's very opaque and it rarely requires more than one layer, so it's very good for just plain backgrounds like this. However, it's very chalky and you can't really paint over it when it's dry, because it, like acrylic, once it's dry, that's it, and you can paint over it layers and layers and it won't get affected. But gouache becomes liquid again if you wet it, so it will smudge and mix into whatever you're painting on top of it with. So I don't use it too often, but every now and again when I just need a bright bit of like one tone, one colour, like in this red background. And I thought the red background was quite cool, very, very contrasting with you know, the dull greens and such of the character. And red's good in it. Getting the details in there with the black/red, or the blood as I call it. Getting that blood. The details, a few shadows here and there with the finest fine brush that I have. Outlines, details, little creases, little shadows, little bits and pieces, which takes a long time. See, painting humans is sort of annoying, because I prefer, like the previous few paintings have been sort of big wacky characters. I could just paint a big head and big silly eyes and teeth, and it's, for a smaller painting especially, it's pretty fun and looks pretty good. But with this, a man, there's a lot of details to put in. It takes a bit more time and effort to get it all in there. And then an ever so slightly thicker brush, because I realised it needs more in terms of shadow. So here I just started colouring in larger areas in shadow, just to give it a bit more weight on one side, so it didn't feel as floaty as I felt like it did, to hold it down a bit more. And then the white highlights at the end. That means it's the end of the piece. Oh my god! And then right at the very end, after I finished painting and recording, I realised it could have used just a tiny little bit extra. So I painted an orange, a tiny little bit of orange on one side as like a little rim lighting glow effect type thing. Which I think works. It's not amazing. It's nothing fantastic. Anyway, so that's the finished piece.